So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Stardust Artist Talk today. This talk is happening in multiple time zones, which is very exciting. Before we begin today, I want to first acknowledge where the Zoom is coming from and where ESMoA is located. We recognize that we are guests in the homeland territory of the Tongva. We extend our respect and gratitude to the many indigenous peoples who call these lands home. Before we begin, and before our lovely panel introduces themselves, I wanted to talk a little bit about the show Stardust. Experience 45 Stardust, as many of you remember, opened in February. Stardust is a backstage pass to the world of creative systems and a showcase of collaborative projects produced by ESMoA curator, Dr. Bernhard Zuenkeler, and artist collective, Freeters. Stardust features over 40 artworks and objects. Some of the works on view are interactive, such as the three-sided foosball table by artist Ben Beyer, toy blocks by Miriam Nolte, and a deliberate transformation of the traditional game of chess entitled Free Chaz by Bernhard Zuenkeler. Also on view are artworks by Peter Drea, Jean-André Franck-Guinard, Martin Kippenberger, Piet Mondrian, Egon Schiele, Mikael Sistig, and Amelie Spetzel. The ESMoA Experience Award recipient for Stardust is Rachel Robin Reid. Reid is a versatile artist whose practice includes work in ceramics, printmaking, fiber arts, and textiles. Since 2015, Rachel has been predominantly working in ceramics, devoting much of her practice to making miniature ceramic vessels thrown off the hump. This method of working also lends itself to the title of Reid's work, On View in Stardust. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know I gave a brief introduction to Stardust and to our wonderful speakers that are here today. But Bernhard, would you like to get us started, maybe talking about how Stardust came to be, kind of what your guiding questions or goals were for the show, and maybe some new information that that we don't know. Oh, one quick thing, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Holly M. Crawford. I think that's why Wallace was texting me. I'm Holly M. Crawford. I'm the Director of Education at ESMoA. I get to work with Barbara and our fabulous colleagues. And as I said earlier, this is the first Zoom, virtual Zoom artist talk that we've put together for this. And I'm just so excited that Rachel, Miriam, and Bernhard and I could all get together to make this possible today. So thank you everybody so much for joining us.
Yeah, should I go ahead? Yeah, just to introduce Stardust. Stardust in many ways is a little bit the work what we are doing right now in Germany and also some other countries, and it's a little bit our effort of let's say leading art a little bit out of the ivory tower of let's say only living in museums, but rather getting it to the people and really explain a little bit about how artists work and show their works in connection also with the way how they think. So the whole show is kind of based upon a few elements of creative thinking, what every artist is moving, and it also gives a little bit of a window into the actual work what we are doing with companies, basically in Germany, but we have also done a big project in San Francisco, and we are also doing some stuff now in probably in China. So the whole show is a little bit like you look into our factory, and I'm happy to show you around a little bit and to talk a little bit about those elements of creative thinking. And I'm totally happy to answer all the questions. So yeah, I would just start to go through this kind of blossom what I put together for this show, so that it becomes a little bit more visible. I can share it. I mean, it's a basic it's a basic circle, and what I like about it, even now in the Corona time, I think it gives you it shows you a little bit how people think right now, or at least I can only say it from Hamburg, because right now I'm kind of stuck in Hamburg. But what you see is like, before you start as an artist, you kind of get inspired, or anybody gets inspired before he starts with creative thinking. In the old days, like the Greek, they waited for the kiss of the muse, or other people, they were putting their antennas up in order that thunder would strike them with a creative idea. And nowadays it's the coronavirus, because like in many ways you get inspired with irritation or with a total disruption. And the coronavirus in a way is a total disruption for many processes. So I don't know anybody right now who doesn't think about, okay, what will happen, and is inspired to think about his life and to think about what will go on. And so they enter into the next step, which is imagination. So they all are busy now thinking about, okay, what kind of vision should I develop for myself? What should go on, and what should happen, and what ideas do I have to basically to maybe change my life, or maybe change the way I look at things, or maybe even what does my business in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, after all those ideas and you put them together, the next phase comes, which is the phase of intention, where you actually purposely choose what you want to do and what you want to concentrate on. And if you really like it, you keep on repeating it. That's the phase of iteration, where you can also put new ideas into the game, but basically you repeat what you are doing, and then you enter the phase where it's almost in your veins, and you really feel it, and you intuitively know what you are doing. You don't have to think about it anymore, because you are just in the flow, which is basically intuition. And then, of course, when you are really playing with it, you do it a little bit more, and you feel totally free to do it. And then you get sort of in the part of being able to improvise with it. And the real nice thing is when you improvise, then you invite others to basically join you in this improvisation, which is the part of interaction, which is the core. Because then once you are able to basically dance with others, you usually do it in a fun way, and you inspire others, and then the whole circle kind of becomes full, and the whole thing starts again. And that's what I call the pathway of innovation. And when you put it in more poetic words, that's basically what people did for 2,000 years, or all artists did for 2,000 years. And you can show examples. And so the whole show is a little bit about giving examples of those basically elements of innovation. And there are many others from a neurological point of view, but those are the basic elements. And I know from our experience with Fritas, with a lot of corporations, they really look into that, because they have no clue. Because what happens usually in corporations is, when you see this symbol, or this rather circle of intention, and you see the circle of iteration, and then you see the circle of interaction, that's usually what they consider as the path of innovation in many ways. It's basically the CEO is coming, gives a report, and tells the people what to do, which is like his intention. Then they have to keep repeating it and work together. And then he starts the next year, the following year, but with another business plan or business goals with KPIs, and they basically do it over and over again. And so they totally forget the motivational parts of imagination, inspiration, and improvisation, and also a lot of intuition. And so that they get stuck. And with actually with many parents, it's the same thing. When they want their children to play piano, they call the teacher, which is like an intentional act, and they make the child learn the piano and play the piano every Monday at 3 o'clock. And then, of course, he does it. And then for a Christmas party, he has to play again. And as soon they stop inviting the piano teacher, the kid stops playing the piano because they forgot the other parts of the circle of innovation. And that's actually, let's say, a sad situation. So that's what we try to change. And when you look further, the first part is really like how to inspire people. And of course, I told you it's also a little bit about disruption. And then, of course, you come into this circle of imagination. And many times, for example, many people, when they think about imagination, they basically, or they often think about stuff what they are used to. And one of the things a lot of artists, for example, think about, what a lot of people who, let's say, are not so used with art would almost never think about is seeing the negative. Basically seeing something which is not there in a positive way, but there in a negative way. So when artists, especially sculptors, look at stuff, they not only look at the, let's say, the steel construction or the full sculpture as a marble figure or something like that. They look at the space between the arm and the body. They look at basically at the shape in a different way, and that's something what really can inspire people and push your imagination. And at the same time, it's also interesting to see, because your intuition is also something what sometimes gets hardwired. And for example, when you see this picture here right now, and I put it in the show just to show you how your intuition works. Everybody sees the triangle. And that's not because there is a triangle, it's because you are hardwired to make these connections. Your brain is hardwired for this closing effect. So your brain is immediately adapting to the situation and basically fulfills a picture what's not really there. And you have this effect in many, many, many ways, and you can use it. I mean, when you come up with new ideas, you can use this closing effect or other effects from your intuition in order to push yourself. And so this is just one of the examples, that just to show people, okay, think about the negative and think about pushing your intuition into the game. Another way of, let's say, pushing your imagination is morphing. Morphing is another technique, or let's say method of artists, to basically put shapes of two different things together and make something new out of it. And everybody knows these kind of things. We all do some morphing. I mean, if you are in a kitchen, and every stew is basically a morphing event, but you can do it also with pretty much everything. And sometimes it's really fun to do that. And if you think about it in a more obvious way, you almost never run out of ideas. Morphing always gives you new ideas, especially when you, for example, put together things that have nothing to do with one another. Like here, for example, the chair, and then this, obviously this, I don't know the English word, Schubkarre. Karen, maybe you know it, the word Schubkarre. Well, I mean, it's basically an instrument you lose on a construction site, and when you combine it here, that's something what really looks different.
Bernhard, a wheelbarrow?
A wheelbarrow, yeah, right, yeah. Another thing what I wanted to put out in the show is, like, for example, the whole subject of iteration. In many, many ways, iteration is really, really boring for many people. But at the same time, it can be a lot of fun, and it can be very interesting, especially when you, for example, you look at it from a different point of view. Because, like, for example, in music, iteration is what, in most of the time, what makes you hear or differentiate like melody from noise. You know, as soon as you hear a rhythm, as soon as you hear a repeating sound, immediately you get into it. And the same thing happens with colors or with paint. As soon as you see patterns, if you see sort of iterations, then you suddenly start like realizing it, and you are basically always looking for it. And this stripe piece I put up because that's actually an exercise we did in Germany. Like, for example, when you work together with a group, and I can also recommend it when you work together. I mean, you can work anywhere, whether it's in a kindergarten, in a hospital, or anywhere, and you want to bring a team together. You let everybody pick in a team his favorite color. And usually this color symbolizes then the person. And when they all start like making a painting only with stripes, and everybody puts his stripe and the thickness of his stripe on the painting, and they can do it one after the other, and you don't have any like rule there. In the end, always something great comes out of it. There's no way something is not attractive. And when you really blow it up, for example, you can make a super nice wallpaper with it. And it's just a nice way to say, okay, this is our space, and we want to make it really our team space. And everybody brings the best of him, which is his favorite color. And then suddenly, boom, you have an iterative process, and it shows you that iteration can be fun. The next one also talks a little bit about intuition. Like, for example, when you read the first line, A, B, C, it's pretty obvious that's A, B, C. When you see the second line, it's like 13, 12, and 11. But when you really look closer, you realize, well, the 13 in the second line and the B in the first line are kind of the same. And this is also one of those intuitive rules that you are hardwired with, this closing effect I was mentioning before, because you try to make sense, and then kicks in another intuitive rule, which is the priming effect. So whatever you get primed with, and the A is basically priming you to see the B, and in the second line it's the 12 that immediately makes you see the 13. So whatever comes in the connection with the piece, it makes you automatically see something what is maybe not really there. So a lot of artists can play with this priming and this closing effect. And I mean, the advertisement companies do it all the time, of course, to manipulate us. But it's also nice because you can use this priming effect also in work surroundings or wherever you are, let's say, and invite guests. I mean, if you set up the table in a beautiful way, everybody comes into a festive mood. I mean, that's very basic, and everybody knows that, but we still don't pay enough attention there. So that's what we try to really explain here in the show. And with the next piece, I want to show you also another example for imagination and this morphing effect. Ben Bayer, who cannot be here today, unfortunately, this is one of his great examples how you use the morphing effect. Basically, you mix table soccer with a triangle, and suddenly a totally new game comes out of it. So that's also one of the things where I really encourage also people to look at as more. The free chess is a little bit the same way, where you challenge an existing thing, combine it with something else, and a totally new idea is born. The last one here on my list is another, I think, great example of an iterative process. It's the artist Peter Drea, who painted for almost all his life, every week, 2 glasses. And he calls this every day is a good day. And those glasses, they kind of look the same, and they are like photorealistic, like super, super nice. And when you really look at it, you feel like, oh, come on, it's always the same glass. And it is the same glass. But he makes one exception to this to the piece. 1 glass per week he paints at night, and 1 he paints at day. And when you see it, the reflection, you kind of can see it. There is a light bulb, and on the other there is the reflection of a window. But he almost gets into a meditative mode when he does it, and it becomes a pure abstraction, the whole thing. And when you really look at it, you kind of see the elements, but of course your eye makes it look like a glass. but for him, it's almost like a meditative process. And I think it's also a beautiful example to show that an iterative process or a habit, when you develop it and you really like it and it's a good habit, it's one of the cornerstones of a learning process. You just have to find out, okay, what really attracts you and how this iterative process, I mean, building this habit, which becomes your intuition, can be beneficial to your life. So, I mean, this is like 6 examples from the show. And since Rachel, her work is also a little bit like I feel about iteration and most of all about variation, I would like to give Rachel the word. So let me just quickly get this. Stop. Oh, where's my, sorry. I need to stop this. Okay, perfect.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I can jump right in. There was a lot. I already responded to just what you were saying, Bernhard, so we can talk about that later. But I will put up my screen. Let's see. I'm just going to do it this way. So the pieces I was going to begin talking about, this is, these are the work that's in Stardust at ESMoA. And the title of it is 102 Miniatures Thrown Off the Hump, or some version of that. And the work in Stardust is an iteration of a series that I began 4 years ago, where each segment of the project showcases different pieces and periods of time. And while each vessel is made by hand and it's thrown off the hump, they show the variation of form and palette while keeping a constant of scale and process. So for this one, there are 102 miniatures, and you see them in view in the space. But I have other ways that I've used them. So this was from a series 3 years ago, and it was more about color and collaring, as well as another one that shows, you know, just these different feelings I was having at moments. This is more of a muted gray palette, and I was really focusing on playing with that connection of form and palette, as well as repetition, and getting into a state of mind of just creating. But this project actually started out as more of a means of necessity, that I was working in a studio, a collaborative pottery studio, and had, you know, way too many options for clays to use and way too many options of glazes and colors to use. And so I created this task for myself that I would make a test tile for each variation. And at the same time, while a test tile is kind of a boring thing, I thought I would hone my skills in throwing off the hump, and these little tiny vessels just came to be. So it was something where I took what was a chore and I created a project out of it. But I'll back up for a moment. You know, while I was starting this task, I was taking photos throughout the entire process. You know, photos of them in my hands, photos of me working on them, photos before and after glazes, but I never wrote down specifics. So my lack of taking notes was the catalyst of this process. You know, the mundane chore evolved, of creating a color chart evolved into a project. And to be honest, even to this day, I don't really hum and haw over the specifics anymore. That it's about a moment in time, and it's about the variation and the iteration. And so this is how they're all made. They start off as just a lump of clay that I center and I pinch off a little bit, and whatever amount I pull off, that's what the shape dictates. So there's a lot of process rules I've given myself. And I make no intention of shape. It's pure spontaneity. You know, the only notion I have of, you know, if it's done and if it's a keeper is when I take it off the hump. And, you know, I always take a little moment just to laugh of it and, you know, admire its sheer littleness, that, you know, a form has function in actuality, but when seen in masses allows the viewer to see something other than just a decorative vase. So they become these little moments, these little moments of joy and silliness. And so it's a practice that is probably pretty good for me. But on the other side of that, there's a reaction of when it doesn't make the cut. This is a whole process of working that is over a period of time of whatever amount of clay I have allowed myself to work with during that. And if it doesn't make the cut, if it's not right, it gets squashed. I don't give it a moment to breathe. I pull it off the hump and I throw it into a pile. And so after every session, I have probably equally as much of a graveyard as I do new work and new pieces. So it's quite a brutal reaction, and in one fell swoop, it's over and I keep going. So that's been my history of working, is in making these tiny objects, you know, hearkening to various points in our history, relating to classical shapes as well as more contemporary shapes. And it's always somewhat about the perfection of it, that it's not only this darling small object, but I've worked really hard to get the details there. And in a time of COVID-19, I've lost my ability to work in a communal studio space. And so I've had to adapt, like many artists, that we are now stuck indoors trying to figure out how to continue making work. And so I've moved on to hand building. That's not the photo I thought was going to be there. So I've moved on to a home studio, and you know, if you haven't noticed in the background of my video, I have 2 cats that run the place, and they're somewhat my studio assistants. I could not get them off of my studio table while trying to document. So there you go, Scout and Sebastian. But while working in a new means of working, I'm trying to find my parameters. And while it's the same medium, it's a new medium for me. I'm teaching myself a new means of working and working alone, and without the camaraderie of a studio where, you know, even if I keep to myself, I am gleaning ideas from others and encouraging others and being encouraged back. So it's strange to have these 2 little buggers as my studio mates. And the work has changed. It's grown in size. It's now about the wonkiness. It's about the imperfection. I think an old studio mate of mine has recently said the line, what was it? Leave perfection to the wheel. And that hand building is not the antithesis of that, but it has so much to show you that it's not about the perfection. And so these are the latest vessels I've been making, and they're all a little wobbly. They really show the hand, and it's been hard for me to break out of that mindset of yes and no, right and wrong. And they also take so much longer to make. So it's in slow motion now. I don't have that same gut reaction of it's wrong halfway through. It's more, it's not there yet. I have to keep going. It has to get bigger. It has to keep evolving. And I have noticed there is a moment when I realize them being done. They take on various, you know, sort of sizes, various levels of hand. But my instincts are still off. I'm still learning when it's right. So I don't have, I would say the one thing that's been my main constant in all of my work, all of my process, is working within the idea of extremes. And so while these aren't extremely tall now, they are extremely tall for me. But there's nothing to stop me from going bigger. There's no rules set in place like I had on the wheel of this is the amount of clay you have, this is what you're working with, because I can just keep grabbing more and keep working more. And I've enjoyed that, but my work has always lived in this element of extremes, whether it be the size, large or small, or the quantity, from small groupings to large masses, like the work in Stardust. And so it's a strange new world of trying to make work within COVID-19 and navigating these new rules. And I'm still trying to find the charm in these pieces. There's something there, but it's a different means of working, but from the same mentality of creating multiples, creating iterations, creating a variation on a theme.
I had a question about kind of this idea of developing like good habits or like a ritual for working, especially in isolation. I think this is something that maybe I should say for the ends in the Q&A. But how has that process been? Did you find your flow? Like, how did you work through those flow disruptions? Because I imagine there's a lot of creatives in this room right now, myself included. I have found it extremely difficult to do any work with everything that's going on around us.
Yeah, I will say my brutal gut reaction that I have in throwing miniatures was definitely there in the first few, and I've destroyed most of the beginning work. These are the only ones that have made it thus far, and they're all in greenware. They haven't gone through their full stages, so I have no idea if they'll actually exist once they go through several firings. But there was something that Bernhard was talking about of morphing, and I think that's been my motivation to keep working at home. Was I saw a glimmer of hope in the first one I made, and it's morphed my perspective on what my work is and what these vessels are. And, you know, I'm still questioning the idea of function and form. So I don't know if that helps.
No, thank you so much. That actually clarifies a lot. Thank you. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you, Ollie.
Miriam.
Yes.
You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I just need to, yes. Yeah, I'm responsible for the toy blocks in this exhibition. And this artwork consists of around 1,200 wooden blocks in around 18 different colors, rainbow colors. And yeah, one block fits in one hand. I've got one here. But all of them are like a huge carpet of colored pixels, which visitors are invited to play with. And I really like the idea of using lots of small pieces to create one big artwork. When I planned this artwork, I suddenly realized that one little block is actually not really heavy. It weighs 45 grams. But all of them are about 65 kilos. That's really a lot. And we had to think how to get them from Germany to El Segundo. Yeah, but it worked. And yeah, there are no rules of the game or any instructions. Everybody is invited to play with the blocks, no matter which type of persons you are. yeah, and it actually began already when I developed this artwork. Actually, we colored every single cube with a sponge. That was a lot of work, but it was really satisfying, and it was so much fun to choose the different colors and that they all fit in one sequence of rainbow. And I went really pedantic on that while sorting the cubes. And now in the exhibition, they are just mixed together on the carpet. So that was actually the first step, that there happened something with this artwork, from my really strict thought, to how it was presented in the end. I can show you some. Oh God. I just have to, here, that's how they take place in the exhibition, on a huge carpet where you can sit comfortable and play. There is another view. And this picture, actually, I really like, because you can see how different the ways of deal with those toy blocks can be. Here on the left side, these people are really focusing on the colors. There is a purple play session, or the cold color ones, or the boy he just took the white ones and the red ones. But the girl in the front, she maybe she's more the sculptor. She maybe likes to build walls and towers. So you can see it moves between sculpture and painting, and it depends what intention the person has who played with it. And yes, I really like that. And maybe this artwork reminds us a little bit of a children's room, but I think it really awakes the play instinct. We say Spieltrieb in Germany. It's the play instinct in every one of us. So it's not only for children, also can use it for example, team building or coaching. For example, you can build a landscape together, or a city in a team, or you can work to a specific question, as we maybe knew. I know that from Lego serious play, they also use that kind of technique, that they have one question and then they build something with the Lego to these questions. But you also can use the toy blocks to relax on your own, or to do some brainstorming about colors. I think on the picture, the lady on the right side, she has a really nice combination of colors. There are no limits. And yes, in our Frites collective, we work actually a lot with this play instinct, and we started to create different games to awake this play instinct. This is a dice, but you are if you roll this dice, you are really physically involved, because it's really heavy. It's huge, and if you roll this dice, you really have to put some effort in it. And we also did a lot of small ones and play with the words on it. Here you can see some examples. Yes, in my own artwork, I really like to create small pieces which I develop into big expansive sculptures by putting them together. There is a ball covered with bouncy balls. I think that's where over 1,000 bouncy balls I put on there. And yeah, I really like to move between painting and sculpture, as you can see in the toy blocks, but also here in the bubble, this huge bubble. Yeah, another thing what's really interests me as an artist is to deal with structures and meetings places in public context. And I have realized various art projects in public space in Bonn, and it's a little bit like the toy blocks, that there are different people that come together they might don't know before, and I have a lot of material I offer, and then here, for example, we had 200 bamboo sticks, and we had created a big city in a park in our hometown, and there were lots of neighbors from the town and refugees. They're all built together by playing and doing art together. Or for example, here we had this triangle canvases we built in our neighborhoods with lots of children and adults and young adults, and we also built a little city or kind of building out from this canvases. So the toy blocks, actually I can combine I really like to the idea of bringing people together and to give them the opportunity for mutual understanding through artistic and aesthetic education, and also this thing that you have this opportunity to move between paintings and sculpture. I think that's it.
Miriam, thank you so much. And some friends might remember too that you also previously had work at ESMoA during the El Segundissimo show, where you kind of created this beautiful floating island.
Yeah.
That you wanted to go live in. It was so magical and so playful. I really do admire your drive to bring play into the public space so that it can form a connection, but it's also bringing so many of these ideas together. And I'm just wondering now, have you been thinking about how this current pandemic is going to change your practice, how there might be a different way to bring play and people together in the public sphere?
Yeah, I'm really thinking about this these days, and to be honest, I don't have a solution right now, because I think the internet enables a lot of possibilities. For example, now I'm in Germany and I can join this art talk even though I'm so far away. But for me, really important is the experience of our senses, like smelling, touching, sensing, feeling. And I don't know, how can we how can this be in the next time? I really don't know, because for me this is really a part of the whole process, doing, for example, participatory projects, because you have to, it starts by that you can't carry something on your own. You need two persons, and then it already begun conversation, or I really don't know, but I'm still thinking about it. I'm dreaming about a big garden somewhere where it really needs a garden. Yeah, and we'll see. Maybe in 1 year we can talk again, and then, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miriam. Well, to our presenters, thank you so much for sharing about your projects. We are going to open up the chat for some Q&A. I do have some questions for everybody. Actually, this is something that's been weighing, I think, a lot on our minds, especially as Barbara and I are doing lots of different programming these days in order to stay connected with our audiences virtually, and to meet to not only meet their interests and their needs, and but also to continue with the experience of Stardust, which is so tactile. And thinking a lot about how a show that invites touch has really changed and imploded since this pandemic started. So I guess my question to all of you, what is gained and what is lost about Experience the Works during COVID-19? How can visitors virtually stay engaged with the work at this time of social distancing?
Can I say something? Because I had a kind of experience lately. I saw a painting of Ophelia by Sir John Everett Millais. It's really beautiful. Ophelia is lying in a kind of in the water, and there are flowers everywhere, and it really inspired me the last days in my garden work, actually. And so I thought how it's always has been that artworks are a kind of springboard, I don't know, we say Sprungbrett, springboard, for individual ideas and thoughts of the visitor or viewer. So I think we still have the possibility to see pictures and paintings, and can be sensitive to be inspired of these ideas or paintings or sculptures from artists, and to take these ideas into our everyday life and connect it there. So that was my experience in the last days. Hello?
Hi. Oh, yeah. I was also going to kind of tack on that of saying that, so much of the work that, I saw today, especially from Miriam and, the Frieders in general, that they are so tactile too. And so it's this strange notion of like wanting to touch things and wanting to interact with objects. And then now we're doing it virtually, and we're all just doing our best. But I do think there's something to it that so many of us are now turning to other means of, whether it be working in a garden. And, I had big plans for a garden on a patio that now I don't have any soil or plants. I have 5 plants. But there's definitely that notion that I think as people in general going through this, we're forcing ourselves to find other meaningful ways with our senses. And, we're almost a lot more sensitive than maybe before.
Bernhard?
No, it's all good. It's, I have to say right now, I'm confronted with a lot of, for example, people from companies who have the same kind of the same problem, because colleagues don't see each other anymore, and they want to keep everybody motivated to work together still. And what I like also about this format, I think in many ways, I mean, I have a lot of conferences right now, and I kind of see a lot of backgrounds in the last couple of days. And when I look at some of the stuff here on my computer now from ESMoA, and I see some of the pictures, I feel like, yeah, those pieces look, even as a background, they look pretty awesome. So I will actually introduce people to it, because I could see with just by looking at your backgrounds, I mean, Natasha, your background there looks pretty cool. Barbara's background looks pretty cool. So there are some nice orchestrations there, and I feel like, okay, that's for sure one of the things we have to think about when we move on after Corona. And I just see some of the pieces in the show, although they are very tactile, if you blow them up and if you just put them in the background, people keep thinking about that. And I will for sure make use of some of those pieces.
Okay, so I started with the hard. I think I started with the hardest and possibly most sad question. But where are you finding creativity in this moment?
I can go first. I mean, it's for me really is, like I said, COVID-19 is a major disruption. Actually, for Germany, it's the largest or the most craziest disruption since World War II. I mean, there are so many comparisons because it will have a devastating impact. Although Germany is pretty well off right now, but like everybody is confused right now. We have when you look at the numbers, all the economists right now in Germany, they can't believe what they see. I mean, they're in shock. And so I think this shock actually for creative people I think it's really a source of inspiration. And I mean, of course, everybody has to think about it. So I feel like right now, it's actually our opportunity. And what Miriam mentioned, or what Rachel mentioned, I mean, to be in a situation like that and fight and think about, okay, how do I morph this situation with I mean, compare this maybe with something what happened in the past and find a way out, or do it in a playful way, because honestly, the situation sometimes is so disastrous. I feel like only a playful way can make you feel not sad and try to make the best out of it. And I can see that some people are really willing to think in very drastic ways about new methods to work together, new methods to actually look at workplaces again. So I think, I mean, for me, honestly, it's like, I mean, all the projects what we had were kind of canceled overnight, and now they are coming back. But for example, one of the projects that got canceled was a major new restaurant, and the guy is one of the largest caterer in the Ruhr area, and he was supposed in an old coal factory to make a new flagship store. And now he thinks, you know what, since COVID-19 is really forcing me that people cannot sit close in my restaurant anymore, I spread the tables all over the place. And so we are now forced to think about new ways to create mobile tables, and to think about ways how they can still sit together and maybe let artists walk from table to table and give a little program. I mean, I'm not talking about the classic mariachi band or something like that, but it's a nice way to think about new ways to give artists a chance, and then invite people and say, well, do you want to come into the coal factory? And you will see 20 artists, because they all come to your table. And so it becomes a totally new format. So those are the things what we are thinking right now.
Yeah, and I think for me, I stay a lot at home, and it really calms me down and gives me the time to focus. So I start drawing again, and I actually have a little baby right now. So the time is really short between the nursing, and so but it's also focusing me that it's so quiet around me, I think.
That's definitely true. It kind of piggybacking on that, like it is often very like I'm in this space all the time. And so I've come to appreciate little nuances of it, but it is finding that line in between kind of boredom and despair and reveling in this, as well as just learning and failing in a good way. And it's been nice to kind of have that time and space to learn something new and not feel like, oh, I need to go run these 10 errands, because you can't. Your errands have to be done from home. You have to coordinate. And so I think it allows time to be spent you're a lot more conscious about the time that you're using and what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Rachel, Miriam, Bernhard, for sharing your thoughts, sharing your process, and being vulnerable with us today, because I know this is a very vulnerable time for us all. So I think it's, but it does speak to that that creativity cannot be deterred ever, and that it's as Stardust has shown us, this is something that is part of us. It's part of this universal idea of being connected, and creativity bringing us together. So thank you all so much for sharing with us today. Just want to do a quick time check, everyone, that it is 12:13. So we do have time, I believe, for a few questions. I know I saw Barbara's hand go up. Barbara, did you have a question?
Hi. Yes, I'm super curious. So what I am most impressed with Stardust is just that you as Fritos, but also as Artist Collective, that you all work together, and you really astound, like Ben Bayer, the last show doing the painting with the meat, and then having now the soccer table is really like this contrast, which I cannot feel stronger, that you have different sides. I mean, I'm used with Bernhard getting always full of surprises, how he comes with new ideas, but I'm wondering, how do you play together at this moment? Like, I mean, how does, for example, Fritos, how do you play still, like, do you still make moments of like coming together over Zoom and play? Like, how do you keep the playing going, right now? Maybe that's a question for Bernhard. Do you still play right now?
Yes, very much. I mean, it's, of course, there are some restrictions, but I have to say we are like a family also. So we kind of, because we had some projects together, so we are probably closer there still than let's say like people who really have to stay away from one another. I mean, a lot of offices, they really work only with a capacity of 20% being there. So with us, since the hall or the factory is pretty big, there is enough space so that everybody can still work in his little corner kind of, or in his studio, whether it's woodwork or metalwork or something like that. But I mean, the brainstorming process, came to a little bit to a halt, I have to say, because it's, but on the other hand, like I said, it's still, we are busy thinking about reconstructing the place and basically using the time to find new ideas. I mean, And that's happening over the email, over phone, but also with present in the space. I think it's really hard for artists not to be present with inspiring stuff around you. Yeah. I have to say, a lot of people come also from, I mean, ESMoA right now, how it looks right now, is only a little glimpse of what's going on in the factory, because there's like pieces who are finished, pieces who are not finished, and pieces who may never be finished, and stuff that's lying around from airplane parts to, I don't know, old X-ray hospital stuff to whatever. And all this stuff, if you have it around you, it really is inspiring. So it's really tough on a lot of people if they are not in the space, you know. So I can totally get what Rachel said, that you know, I mean, you get really compressed if you stay only in one place. Although I have to say, one of the greatest artists from my thinking is Giorgio Morandi, who spent his whole life in a little studio in Bologna, never left Bologna, and still one of the greatest artists on the planet. So I don't know. I mean, but right now it's tough. Rachel.
We're doing this again. Okay. Thank you. Honestly, I was just really enjoying what you were saying, Bernhard. So I kind of lost the topic, I'll be honest, but more responding, I mean, to the idea of working in situ and in space with other people. These virtual meetings have helped, and I've actually found I've been talking to friends and family more often. It's a weird notion, though, that, you know, our normal sense of time and space is really disrupted. I had a meeting yesterday that I had to hang up on because I had, you know, a leaf blower outside and I couldn't go anywhere. It's not like I could run down the street and escape this and still be at work. And so there's a weird feeling that, you know, I'm really thankful to have a home that's comfortable and a place that can still breed creativity. Though it's a new paradigm, and I don't know how other people have been dealing with this, of almost guilt that you're in a good situation and able to still function, as well as I don't know, just it's a constant ebb and flow of feelings and creativity. I don't know what Bernhard is about to do, but I have been enjoying show and tells. I often will run around my house and bring something up. Is that what you were doing?
No, I'm just saying, you know, since a lot of people are maybe don't want to see my face anymore, I'm just right now, because I have so many sculptures which I bought on flea markets or other places. So I'm thinking about putting together a little series about talking heads, because I have from Plato to Maradona, like these type of sculptures. And I bought this guy, for example, this guy I bought in, it's like a dandy. I mean, it's a
mannequin
from the 50s. So I have so many of those talking heads. So I want to write dialogues for them for little series, and they can just talk about COVID-19, and because they don't really are not existing. And I feel like, okay, that's what you do when you are stuck in a place. You just put everything out of the shelf and you think, okay, what does it do with me?
Yeah, you kind of unload the metaphorical toy box and kind of get to working, right? And Rachel, I do hear that as well. Kind of the there's mourning the way that things were before. There is the I think there's the also trying to balance what you have and how you can support your community from near and far, especially as, we can't ignore that the pandemic, that the pandemic is just stressing the inequality that was already there.
Yeah.
And comes to a bigger discussion of, I think right now in the U.S. There is this push to reopen, and in California we're starting with different phases. So like yesterday, florists and toy stores could reopen, and some retailers, bookstores, but it can only be curb. You have to pick it up from the curb. You can't physically still go into these places yet. And it seems to this rush to get back to whatever normal was before this, when it's like, well, what made that thing normal?
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking back to Miriam and talking about the importance of play, the importance of coming together, and how play allows us to come up with solutions to problems in a very natural way. And it's so difficult to get to that space of authentic play. And Karen, I know, raised her hand, so I'm going to hand it over to her in a moment, but Karen also was pointing out too, one of the beautiful things about Miriam's work in the show was there was no instruction to it. And actually, if you go through and look at our 360 virtual tour, which you can do on our website, ESMoA.org, there's instructions, and the instructions are just play here. And I'm thinking now how play can be harnessed to help us develop new solutions for the future. Because, inevitably what wasn't working has led us to this point where we have to stay at home, where we're thinking of new and creative ways to come together, where we're trying to advocate, where we're trying to create in a new way. Yes, Karen.
Yeah, so my own experience in the first place is, and that it kind of, I wanted to throw at the artists as well, is whether that is somehow just, I don't think it's just my approach or my problem, but I would be interested in whether that is like an inspiring or non-inspiring moment for you as well. That I feel in these times of confinement, you are kind of forced to spend time with yourself. And to some extent, I feel you have to be in line with yourself, and you have to like to be by yourself and have to stick to yourself. That is sometimes pretty hard. We tend to distract ourselves a lot in normal times. And there is so much to do and so much to get inspiration from once you're outside, and there is so much around you and things need to be done. And all of a sudden, you're actually kind of limited to your own resources, which is, I experience like good and bad days. And every day feels the same to some extent, but then it doesn't, because every day is different. So I tend to like dig into old stuff, try to like empty out and clear closets. And all of a sudden, I encounter things I haven't touched for ages. And I'm really inspired, like doing something with them, rearranging a room, throwing stuff out that I feel like I'm completely done with. And so I guess it's like, it's that back and forth. It's playing with yourself to some extent. And it's also, even though it's sometimes really hard, being by yourself, having to deal with yourself. And I guess it's also like that forcing yourself through. At the end of the day, you get like, you're in line with yourself. So for me, it's like, it's kind of a cleanse, and I really enjoy that in the very end. Although I have to say there are good and bad days, and it's not always fun. So maybe that's something that is like inspiring for you as well, or it's not.
I think, and some days I could definitely say for myself, there are some days I'm okay with being with me, and being alone with my thoughts. Though there are some other days where I just wait for them to pass and wait for the next thing to happen. So I feel like in general, it's been a really great moment for slowing down, and it feels like we've been in slow motion, yet time is just, miles beyond. We're already in May, which is an absolutely absurd thought. And I've kind of been reveling in this not knowing where I am at all at all times, that I haven't quite found solid ground long term. It changes, and it is a kind of been a good time for reflecting on what's important and planning for what you want to see later on. And it has been a really great period, actually. Rebecca, who's here in this chat, her and I have been talking a lot about future plans of creating community spaces, and we sort of get a little bit more one-on-one time now in focusing our thoughts and focusing what's important. I
think in Germany it's a bit different because we are allowed to see one person. So you see all over the parks and you see two persons, and sometimes it gets ridiculous even because yeah, they're walking in strange formations. Yeah, but that's why we are allowed to go outside and to meet somebody, even meet our families right now. So it starts to go into normal life, but it's really not like before, and I don't know how it's going to be. I think even everybody's wearing this mask, and I'm learning to read eyes now because I don't see the smile or the mimic, the face anymore, and so you need to look for other impressions of the body, and yeah, it's really strange how how it's going to be. I don't know.
I think it's a very, let's say, interesting question, Karen, because I feel like right now we never have had such a global, like, experiment, I would say, a truly global experiment at the same time in such a short time. And the way that everybody has to contemplate with himself about what is really important in life, what is really necessary for me. A lot of people tell me, well, I really took the chance to really think, do I need all that? And suddenly they get a lot of time, also by not being forced to travel. Especially a lot of business people suddenly feel like, okay, I have a lot to do. Now I'm in all this telephone conference, but still I feel not as pushed. And I really can think about it. And maybe it gives us a little bit more the chance to not think about quantity, but more about quality. So I don't know. I honestly, although the whole situation is crazy, but in a way I see it very positively.
So Bernhard, if I would put it together, you see it maybe as a restart as well, like as something new is coming out of it, and maybe some. I mean, this whole Zooming, I mean, as some people might be tired of it, it has also something really positive. Like I can only say, like for the drawing club, people from San Diego and Arizona, they all come together, which they were not able before. So when I hear you write, is that like a moment of like, now we are bursting, or like as soon as we are free, like it's like you said, it was funny, you used the term springboard, which is a very literally translation of like, spring is like jumping in German, but it's a jumping board. But when you said spring, it's like, it feels like, okay, maybe this is right now spring, and as soon as we are free, there's a lot of stuff coming out of it, like blooming. I mean, I felt like there were many mixture words games, which I really liked. I mean, so do you feel like this is like, let's see what's coming out of it?
I honestly, I think more in a way that everybody now knows we are living in an historic era. I mean, really historic era, because this thing is happening in China the same way it is happening in Europe, it's happening in America. And we truly, if we don't understand right now that sustainability and communication are two of our biggest issues right now, then I don't know what will happen. I mean, I know a lot of people will probably not get it, but a lot of politicians for sure understand this is historic. I mean, this is really historic, and they think in really radical ways about that in terms of social welfare systems, in terms of pension systems, in terms of production systems, and in many, many ways. So that's why I feel like, yeah, it's for creative people, it's great, because before everybody was trying to do more of the same, and even more. And now people understand, well, you know, I mean, I don't get tired of basically telling you the two almost biblical themes. I mean, you have in the book of Genesis, you have two stories. The one story is the Tower of Babel, which is basically when humans decided they want to try to reach the skies and be bigger. They got this whole disturbance of language, which in the end led to war, which is kind of even today is happening. And then you had the whole story about the Great Flood, which basically the story goes, and the same story goes in Gilgamesh and other mythical stories, where basically human beings were taken from the soil of the earth. And the COVID-19 is only the starting point. This virus will transform over the next couple of years many, many times. And it's only it's a wave, and it's only the first wave, because when we get the super bug, for sure that will really be also a different way. So we have to think in radical ways differently. And I think, yeah, if this one doesn't do it, the next one will for sure do it. So it's like we get the Great Flood in little steps right now. And if we don't take it seriously, nature will explain it to us in even more drastic ways. And so that's why I think it's a great source of inspiration for artists.
Bernhard, I really do appreciate what you said about thinking in radical ways. And I think that's what creative and artists are always doing. The artist is always radical. They're always traveling in between different communities in different spaces. So I really like that idea of a radical. I think to that there's a radical explosion of creativity, and if we weren't aware of it before, I think it's because we weren't paying attention, or there was the outside that's telling us we have to keep going. And now, I think there's a sense of urgency more than ever to be radical with our thinking and intentional with our thinking as well, and our making and creating. Everyone, I thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to wrap up because Bernhard and Miriam, they are in, it's nighttime there. It's pushing 9 p.m. But before we leave, or no, it's after 9 p.m. I'm so sorry. It's probably pushing 10. But before we leave, could I ask our panelists to share a final thought?
I really liked it that it went over boards and limits our talk. Yeah. Thank you.
So much, Miriam. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been actually a very great conversation that, I think final thoughts on today were that it's a really interesting format, and really appreciate that things like this can exist, and that I think this is sort of a really great catalyst for what can happen.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us today, for making time to be here, because I know there's so many things happening in our virtual realm these days. Stay safe, be well, wash your hands, wear your mask, don't touch your face. If you have any questions, if you would like to send us any feedback, we absolutely want to hear from you. You can do that. I'm going to put our general email, and we do have some wonderful programs coming up through May, in May as well. And I'm looking forward to Rachel's takeover of our Instagram, kind of giving us a home studio tour of what she's been working on.
Thank you.